Succeed, How We Can Reach Our Goals, by Heidi Grant Halvorson, Ph.D. Introduction. Have you ever wondered why even the most powerful, disciplined, and successful people in the world can fail at the simplest of goals? Consider this. Not long ago, a man who would soon become the President of the United States, a man of extraordinary discipline and determination, made a promise to his wife. He resolved, once and for all, to quit smoking. He had the best of intentions. He had what he called an ironclad demand from his wife. He was, by any measure, a man who knew how to achieve his goals. And yet, he struggled. He would quit, and then, as he put it, he would fall off the wagon. This isn't a story about a president. It's a story about us. It's about every New Year's resolution that fades by February. It's about the gym membership that gathers dust, the diet that ends with a late-night donut, the important project we just can't seem to start. We all have goals we desperately want to reach, and when we fail, we often blame the same culprit, willpower. We tell ourselves we just don't have enough of it. We think some people are born with an iron will, and the rest of us are just weaker. But what if I told you that this story we tell ourselves about willpower being some magical, innate quality, is almost entirely wrong? What if the secret to success isn't about having more willpower, but about understanding how our goals actually work? Today, we're going to explore a remarkable book called Succeed, How We Can Reach Our Goals. Its author, Dr. Heidi Grant Halvorson, is a social psychologist who has spent her entire career studying one thing: achievement. She has observed thousands of people as they pursue their goals, and she's discovered that most of us, even the smartest and most accomplished among us, completely misunderstand why we succeed or fail. This book isn't based on opinion or motivational fluff. It's built on decades of rigorous scientific research into what makes us tick. Dr. Halvorson pulls back the curtain on our minds and reveals the hidden mechanics of motivation. Here is my promise to you. By the end of our time together, you will see your own goals in a completely new light. You will understand that failure is not a character flaw, and success is not an accident. You will learn that anyone, and that includes you, can become more successful at reaching their goals. You will leave with a toolkit of simple, practical, and scientifically proven strategies that you can start using today to conquer procrastination, resist temptation, and finally turn your wishes into reality. So, let's begin our journey and uncover the science of success. Book summary. Let's start with that old ghost that haunts all our failed goals: willpower. We imagine it as a kind of heroic inner strength. Some people have it, others don't. The thin, non-smoking marathon runners are brimming with it, while the rest of us are left wanting. But Dr. Halvorson asks us to see it differently. Forget the grand idea of willpower and let's call it what it really is: self-control. And this self-control, she explains, is not a fixed trait. It's much more like a muscle. Think about that for a moment. A muscle. What happens when you use a muscle? It gets tired. If you lift a heavy weight over and over, your bicep will eventually fatigue. Your self-control muscle works the exact same way. Imagine this fascinating experiment conducted by a psychologist named Roy Baumeister. He brought hungry college students into a lab that smelled wonderfully of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. On a table in front of them, he placed two bowls. One was filled with those warm, delicious cookies. The other was filled with radishes. Some of the students, the lucky ones, were told to eat a few cookies and ignore the radishes. The other group was given a much crueler task: eat the radishes and resist the cookies. Just imagine the mental energy, the sheer self-control it took for those hungry students to crunch on a bitter radish while the scent of melting chocolate filled the air. They were flexing their self-control muscle hard. Afterward, both groups were given a puzzle to solve. The puzzle was secretly unsolvable, but the researchers wanted to see how long the students would persist before giving up. The results were astounding. The students who ate the cookies worked on the puzzle for about 20 minutes. But the students who had been forced to resist the cookies and eat the radishes? They gave up in just 8 minutes. Their self-control muscle was exhausted. They had used up their strength on the radishes, and they had nothing left for the puzzle. This is happening to you every single day. Every time you force yourself to be polite in traffic, every time you make a decision at work, every time you try to make a good impression, you are using up your self-control. The world's most successful people, from presidents to CEOs, are constantly draining this resource. Oprah Winfrey, a woman of incredible discipline, has spoken openly about her weight struggles, observing that her issues weren't about just eating less, but about her life being out of balance, with too much work and not enough play. She said, "I let the well run dry." That is a perfect description of a depleted self-control muscle. So, if our self-control is limited, what hope is there? Well, this is where the muscle analogy becomes truly empowering. First, just like a muscle, depletion is only temporary. If you rest it, your strength comes back. That's why resisting a temptation feels like torture in the moment. But if you can just get past that initial peak of desire, it often gets easier. You've given your muscle a moment to recover. And second, and this is the most important part, you can make the muscle stronger. You can actually get more self-control. How? The same way you get bigger biceps, you have to give it regular workouts. Research has shown that engaging in daily activities that require a little bit of discipline, things like keeping track of your spending, making sure you sit up straight every time you think of it, or even using your non-dominant hand to brush your teeth, can build your overall self-control capacity. In one study, students who stuck to a daily exercise program not only got healthier, but they also became less likely to spend money impulsively and more likely to do their dishes. The strength they built in the gym was showing up in other areas of their lives. This fundamentally changes how we should see failure. When you fail to stick to a diet after a long, stressful day at work, it's not because you are weak. It's because your muscle is tired. The solution isn't to beat yourself up. It's to understand the muscle and either give it time to recover, or better yet, start a training regimen to make it stronger for the future. But having a strong muscle is only half the battle. You also need to know where you're going. And this brings us to the very foundation of success, the goal itself. Most of us have heard the advice, just do your best. It sounds encouraging, supportive, and motivating. But according to the research, it's actually terrible advice. It's a recipe for mediocrity. Why? Because do your best is hopelessly vague. What does your best even look like? How would you know when you've reached it? In the absence of a clear target, we tend to do just enough to feel like we've put in a decent effort, and then we stop. The science of goal setting, pioneered by psychologists Edwin Locke and Gary Latham, has shown in over 1,000 studies that the most effective goals have two qualities. They are specific and they are difficult. Lose some weight is a wish. Lose 10 pounds is a goal. It's specific. You've either reached it or you haven't. There's no ambiguity, no room to let yourself off the hook. But specificity isn't enough. The goal also needs to be difficult, not impossible, but challenging. Difficult goals cause us to unconsciously increase our effort, focus, and commitment. We persist longer and even find better strategies to get the job done. There's a wonderful story about a logging company where the drivers were only filling their trucks to about 60% of the legal weight limit. They didn't have a specific goal, so they just did what felt right. A researcher came in and gave them a new goal: fill the trucks to 94% of the limit. It was difficult, but possible. When he returned 9 months later, the drivers were averaging over 90%, saving the company millions of dollars. People rise to the challenge you set for them, and for yourself. And here's a beautiful side effect. Succeeding at something hard brings far more satisfaction and happiness than succeeding at something easy. It creates what Locke and Latham call a high-performance cycle, where success and happiness feed on each other. So we need specific, difficult goals. But how we think about those goals is just as important. Any goal can be framed in two different ways. You can think about why you are doing it, or you can think about what you're doing. Let's say your goal is to clean the house. You can think of it as keeping things clean. That's the why. It's the big picture, the purpose. Or you can think of it as sucking up crumbs from the floor. That's the what. It's the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of the action. So which is better? Well, it depends on the situation. Thinking in why terms is incredibly motivating. It connects your small, everyday actions to a greater meaning. Staying an extra hour at work feels like a drag if you think of it as typing for 60 more minutes. But if you think of it as advancing my career, you suddenly feel more energized to do it. Why thinking is your fuel. It helps you resist temptation and stay focused on your long-term vision. When you're tempted by that dessert tray, you don't think about the what, avoiding that piece of cake. You think about the why, becoming healthier and more confident. But there are times when why thinking can be a trap. When you're trying to do something difficult, unfamiliar, or complex, it's much better to think in concrete, what terms. If you're learning to ski for the first time, you don't think about gliding gracefully down the mountain. That's a recipe for wrapping yourself around a tree. Instead, you focus on the what. Keep my knees bent, keep my ski tips together. The what breaks a complex task down into manageable steps. There's a clever study where experienced coffee drinkers were asked to drink a cup of coffee. Some drank from a normal mug. Others were given a strange, heavy, unwieldy mug. Afterwards, they were asked to describe what they had just done. The people with the normal mug preferred why descriptions, like getting energized. But the people with the heavy, difficult mug strongly preferred what descriptions, like raising a cup to my lips and swallowing. In order to manage the difficult task, they had to focus on the mechanics. The trick is to be a mental shifter. When you need motivation or self-control, think why. When you're tackling something tough or new, think what. This brings us to one of the biggest traps in the world of self-help: positive thinking. We're constantly told to visualize success and believe that we will achieve our goals. And there's some truth to this. Believing you can succeed is enormously important. But there's a subtle and dangerous error we often make. Dr. Halvorson points out that there are two kinds of positive thinking. The first is believing that you are likely to succeed. The second is believing that success will come easily. One of these is incredibly helpful. The other is a recipe for disaster. Believing in your ability to succeed, what psychologists call having high expectations, is a powerful motivator. One study on home gym equipment found that the people who truly believed they could stick to an exercise routine were nearly 3 times more likely to still be using their equipment a year later. Confidence matters. But what about believing that the path will be easy? Psychologist Gabriella Tongin has studied this extensively, and her findings are eye-opening. In one study, she followed a group of obese women in a weight loss program. The women who believed they would succeed lost, on average, 26 pounds more than those who believed they would fail. That confirms the power of positive expectations. But Tongin also asked them to describe their fantasies about the process. The women who imagined an easy path, effortlessly resisting donuts and loving every minute of their workouts, lost an average of 24 pounds less than the women who imagined the journey would be difficult. Think about that. Fantasizing about easy success made them less successful. The same pattern has been found with students looking for jobs, people seeking romantic relationships, and even patients recovering from surgery. People who think reaching their goal will be a breeze simply aren't prepared for the obstacles that will inevitably arise. When reality hits, they are devastated and give up. So what's the solution? It's a brilliant technique called mental contrasting. It's a simple, 2-step process. First, you imagine achieving your goal. You vividly picture the positive outcome and how great it will feel. That's the thinking positive part. But then, you immediately follow it with a second step. You reflect on the obstacles that stand in your way. If you want a high-paying job, you first imagine yourself accepting the offer at your dream company. Then you think about the reality, all the other brilliant, qualified candidates you'll be competing against. What does that do? It makes you feel the necessity to act. It turns a pleasant daydream into a concrete plan of action. It makes you want to start sending out applications right now. Mental contrasting is a way to harness the power of positive thinking while grounding it in reality. It gives you both the motivation of the dream and the preparation of a realist. It's one of the most powerful goal-setting techniques you will ever learn. Now, we've talked about how to set our goals, but we haven't talked about where they come from in the first place. The choices we make are profoundly shaped by beliefs we don't even know we have. One of the most powerful of these hidden beliefs has to do with a simple question: can people change? Specifically, do you believe that intelligence is something that is fixed, or is it something that can grow? This is the groundbreaking work of psychologist Carol Dweck. She discovered that people generally fall into one of two camps. Some people are entity theorists. They believe that you have a certain amount of intelligence, and that's that. You're either smart or you're not. Others are incremental theorists. They believe that intelligence is malleable. It's a quality that can be developed over time through experience and learning. Why does this matter? Because this single belief changes everything about the goals you pursue. If you are an entity theorist, if you believe your intelligence is fixed, your primary goal in any achievement situation becomes to prove that you're smart. You want to look good and avoid looking stupid at all costs. You want validation. As a result, you tend to avoid challenges. Why risk trying something difficult and failing? That would just be evidence that you're not smart. You stick to the things you know you're good at. This is a trap. You shortchange yourself, avoiding experiences that could enrich your life simply because you're too focused on proving yourself. But if you are an incremental theorist, if you believe you can get smarter, your goal isn't to prove you're smart, but to get smarter. You want to cultivate your abilities. Challenges aren't threatening. They're opportunities to learn. Mistakes aren't a sign of stupidity. They're valuable feedback. In a telling study at the University of Hong Kong, where all classes are in English, researchers approached students who weren't yet proficient and offered them a remedial English course. The entity theorists, the ones who believed their intelligence was fixed, wanted nothing to do with it. Only 13% were interested. They believed a remedial course wouldn't help, and worse, it would publicly expose their lack of ability. But the incremental theorists, the ones who believed they could get smarter, 73% of them jumped at the chance to enroll. They saw an opportunity to grow. Here's the most important thing you need to know. The entity theory is wrong. Decades of research have shown that intelligence is profoundly malleable. Experience, effort, and opportunity matter immensely. Believing you can get smarter is not just a more positive outlook, it's the scientifically accurate one. Embracing this truth frees you from the need to constantly prove yourself and opens the door to a lifetime of growth. Our beliefs are not the only hidden force shaping our goals. Our environment is constantly nudging us in directions we don't even notice. The vast majority of the goals you pursue every day operate entirely without your awareness. This happens through triggers in your environment. In one experiment, people were asked to construct sentences using words like cooperative, support, and fair. Afterwards, they played a fishing game where they could either keep the fish they caught for personal profit or return them to a common pond to benefit the whole group. The people who had been exposed to the cooperative words returned 25% more fish than those who hadn't. Simply reading the words had unconsciously triggered the goal to cooperate. This is called goal contagion. We can catch goals just by seeing other people pursue them. Reading a story about a student working to earn money makes you work harder on a subsequent task for money. This is why role models are so powerful. They don't just inspire us consciously, they infect us with their goals unconsciously. The good news is, you can use this. You can become the architect of your own environment. If you want to exercise more, leave your running shoes by the door. If you want to eat healthier, put a bowl of fruit on your kitchen counter. Fill your surroundings with cues that trigger the goals you want to achieve. Let your unconscious mind be your ally. So far, we've explored a lot about the nature of our goals. But now let's dive into two of the most important mindsets you can adopt on your journey. The first great distinction is between having a goal to be good versus a goal to get better. A be good goal is what psychologists call a performance goal. It's about proving yourself. You want to get an A to show that you're smart. You want to hit your sales target to show that you're a capable employee. Your self-worth is tied to the outcome. You either win or you lose. There's no in-between. This can be very motivating, especially for easy tasks. But it has a dark side. When the going gets tough, and you stumble, it's easy to conclude, maybe I'm just not smart enough. That thought is devastating. It shakes your confidence, makes you feel anxious and helpless, and often leads you to give up. A get better goal, on the other hand, is a mastery goal. It's not about proving what you are, but about becoming something more. It's about progress. When you pursue a mastery goal, you judge yourself not by a single outcome, but by whether you are improving over time. Difficulties aren't a verdict on your ability. They are a natural part of the learning process. If you get a C on your first exam, you don't think, I'm a failure. You think, what can I do differently next time? How can I improve my study strategy? Dr. Halvorson saw this firsthand when she studied pre-med students in a grueling freshman chemistry course at Columbia University. For many, it was the first truly difficult class they had ever taken. The students who were focused on be-good goals, on proving their smarts through their grades, tended to fall apart after a disappointing first exam. Their performance actually got worse over time. But the students with get better goals, the ones focused on truly mastering the material, showed the opposite pattern. They used setbacks as fuel. They improved with each exam and ended up with higher overall course grades. When persistence is the key to success, a get better mindset is your greatest asset. The second crucial distinction is between a promotion focus and a prevention focus. This is the work of psychologist Tori Higgins, and it's a game changer. Both mindsets can lead to success, but they feel completely different and require different strategies. Think of it this way: are you playing to win, or are you playing not to lose? A promotion focus is about achievement and accomplishment. It's about reaching for your ideals and maximizing gains. The motivation you feel is one of eagerness. When you succeed, you feel happy and joyful. When you fail, you feel sad and dejected. Promotion-focused people are motivated by positive feedback and optimism. They are risk-takers. They work quickly, they're creative, and they're great at brainstorming. Their motto is nothing ventured, nothing gained. A prevention focus, on the other hand, is about safety and responsibility. It's about fulfilling your obligations and minimizing losses. The motivation you feel is one of vigilance. When you succeed, you don't feel elation. You feel relief. A calm sense of phew, I dodged a bullet. When you fail, you feel anxious and nervous. Prevention-focused people are actually motivated by negative feedback and a touch of pessimism. The thought of what could go wrong is what gets them going. They are cautious and meticulous. They value accuracy over speed. They are great at resisting temptation and not letting things fall through the cracks. Their motto is better safe than sorry. Neither focus is inherently better, but one might be better for a particular task. If you need to be creative and work quickly, a promotion focus is your friend. If you need to be accurate, careful, and resist distractions, a prevention focus is the way to go. The key is to match your strategy to your focus. When something feels right, it's usually because your actions are aligned with your underlying motivation. This brings us to the ultimate question: what kinds of goals make us truly happy? It's not just about achieving any goal. It turns out some goals are like junk food. They might feel good in the moment, but they don't provide lasting nourishment. According to self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deitch and Richard Ryan, all human beings have 3 innate psychological needs that must be satisfied for us to experience genuine well-being: relatedness, competence, and autonomy. Relatedness is the need to feel connected to others, to love and be loved. Competence is the need to feel effective and capable in what you do. And autonomy is the need to feel that you are the author of your own life, that you are acting out of your own free will and choice. Goals that feed these needs, goals about building relationships, personal growth, and contributing to your community, are the ones that lead to lasting happiness. Goals that are about external signs of self-worth, like seeking fame, power, or wealth for its own sake, are the junk food. Even if you achieve them, they will not satisfy your fundamental needs and will often leave you feeling empty. The need for autonomy is especially powerful. When we pursue a goal because we want to, not because we have to, we experience what's called intrinsic motivation. This is the best kind of motivation there is. It leads to more enjoyment, creativity, persistence, and better performance. But this motivation is fragile. It can be crushed by anything we experience as controlling: threats, deadlines, surveillance, and even rewards. There's a classic study where preschoolers who naturally love to draw with markers were offered a Good Player Award for their drawings. They drew more than ever to get the award. But weeks later, when the reward was no longer offered, they completely lost interest in the markers. The reward had turned play into work. It had destroyed their intrinsic motivation. The lesson here is profound. To be truly motivated and happy, we need to feel a sense of choice. And when motivating others, our children, our students, our employees, giving them a feeling of choice, even in trivial ways, can make all the difference. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about building our self-control muscle, setting specific goals, using mental contrasting, and choosing the right mindset. But there's one final tool that Dr. Halvorson presents, and it might be the most practical and powerful of them all. It's called if-then planning. Most of us fail our goals not because of a lack of commitment, but because we miss opportunities to act. We get busy, we get distracted, and the moment slips by. If-then planning is a simple way to solve this problem by essentially pre-programming your brain. You take a goal and you spell out, in advance, exactly when and where you will take action. The format is simple. If situation X happens, then I will do Y. Eat healthier becomes, if it is lunchtime on a weekday, then I will eat a salad. Exercise more becomes, if it is 7 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, then I will go for a run. Call my mom becomes, if it is Sunday after dinner, then I will call my mom. This simple act of planning does three magical things in your brain. First, it makes your brain start scanning the environment for the if part of your plan. Second, when that situation arises, your brain spots it immediately. Third, the then part, the action, is triggered automatically, without you needing to consciously deliberate or use up your precious self-control. You've created an instant habit. The effectiveness of this technique is almost unbelievable. In the study of the Christmas essays, students who made an if-then plan for when and where they would write were more than twice as likely to complete the assignment as those who didn't. 71% versus 32%. In another study, 100% of women who made an if-then plan to perform a breast self-exam did so, compared to only 53% of those who didn't. This works for dieting, quitting smoking, exercising, and even with patients recovering from brain injury and heroin addiction. It is, without a doubt, one of the most effective strategies for turning your intentions into actions. Finally, we have to acknowledge that sometimes, success means knowing when to quit. Persistence is a virtue, but blindly persisting in a goal that is unattainable or is costing you too much is a recipe for misery. Dr. Halvorson tells us there are two good reasons to give up a goal. The first is when you realize you simply don't have the resources, the time or the energy, to pursue it without sacrificing other, more important goals. The second is when you realize the cost of achieving it is just too high. It's making you unhappy and stressed. Notice that neither of these reasons is I don't have the ability. If you decide to let a goal go, the crucial next step is to find a new goal to take its place. This allows you to disengage without losing your sense of purpose. It keeps you moving forward, rather than looking back in regret. From the self-control muscle to the power of if-then planning, the science of success offers us a new way of looking at our own potential. It's not about being born with a special gift. It's about understanding the rules of the game and using the right strategies to play it well. Success, it turns out, is a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. Commentary. As we come to the end of our journey through Succeed, I find myself reflecting on its most powerful and liberating idea. For so long, we've been told a story about achievement that centers on mysterious, innate qualities: talent, genius, willpower. It's a story that can feel inspiring if you think you have those qualities, but deeply discouraging if you don't. When we fail, we internalize it as a personal flaw. I'm just not disciplined enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm just a procrastinator. What Heidi Grant Halvorson does so brilliantly is to replace that old, flawed story with a new one, grounded in science. She shows us that success is not a mystery, it's a process. It's a system of cause and effect. And once you understand the system, you can learn to work with it. The shift from blaming our character to examining our strategy is perhaps the most empowering gift this book offers. It's the difference between saying I'm broken and asking, is there a better tool for this job? The idea of the self-control muscle, for instance, reframes failure not as a moral failing, but as a predictable state of fatigue. This simple shift in perspective opens the door to compassion for ourselves and a practical path forward. Rest, recover, and train for strength. Similarly, the distinction between be good and get better goals is a revelation. So many of us, especially when we are young and ambitious, are caught in the be good trap. We see every test, every project, every social interaction as a performance, a verdict on our worth. This book gives us permission to step off that stage and enter the workshop. It reminds us that life is not a final exam, it's a learning process. Adopting a get better mindset is like trading a fragile ego for a resilient spirit. If there are just a few things you take away from our time together today, let them be these simple, actionable steps. First, pick one important goal in your life right now. Just one. And spend 5 minutes reframing it. Make it specific and difficult. Ask yourself if you're trying to be good or get better, and consciously choose the latter. Think about the why behind it to fuel your motivation. Second, create a single if-then plan for that goal. Identify one specific action you need to take and decide exactly when and where you will do it. Write it down. If it is 8 p.m. on Tuesday, then I will spend 30 minutes working on my college application essay at my desk. Feel how that simple sentence transforms a vague intention into a concrete reality. And third, start your self-control workout. Choose one small, consistent act of discipline. Maybe it's making your bed every morning without fail. Maybe it's deciding not to check your phone for the first hour of the day. It doesn't matter what it is, only that you do it consistently. Think of it as a small investment in your own capacity to achieve. That was a summary of Succeed by Heidi Grant Halvorson. We've touched on the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It shows you the layout, but it can't replace the experience of walking the trails, seeing the landscapes, and breathing the air yourself. The real power of this book lies in the details, the dozens of fascinating studies, the subtle insights, and the way the ideas build on one another. If anything we've discussed has sparked a light in you, I encourage you to get a copy. Reading it isn't just an act of learning, it's an act of empowerment. It can fundamentally change how you approach every single day. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable on your own journey of growth, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another book that can change your life. Let's continue to learn and grow together.